Morning, everyone. So this is going to be a fairly fast-paced session because we had a really overwhelming response. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us. We've got 3 prompt questions we're going to go through. We're going to give 2 to 3 minutes for each of the panelists to answer those questions, and then we'll have audience questions towards the end. So that's the general format for this. Would the panelists please introduce themselves? I think that would be the easiest way to do things. The microphone's on.
Good morning, everyone. This is Raj from Verificient. This is a business in making online proctoring solutions. And I grew up in India where the importance of exams is very, very high because of the competitive nature. Came to US for my grad study and did a PhD in computer science in general building large-scale systems. And I was asked to teach remote in South Korea, where I was proctoring a student when the student was taking a distance course from Georgia Tech in Atlanta. So that's where I felt like there's a need for a better way to do online proctoring. This was like 13 years back. And later on, I basically started using AI to how to improve the exam integrity for online learning. Yeah.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Meghan Mencer, and I am here. My business is Harnessing Your Potential. I'm a functional health practitioner. I got into functional medicine because I struggled with autoimmunity myself. They told me that you would always have autoimmunity, and after 10 years of learning myself, I'm autoimmune free, and I've just been on a journey to really just help other people via functional modalities. If you don't know what that is, functional medicine is all about getting to the root, not just symptom management, and how kind of AI works into that. The method that I use is a 4-step method, and it is called the HOPE method. So really what I'm on a mission to is to help people harness their potential to revolutionize healthcare and spread hope to the world. And a lot of the projects that I've been working on, I also do health consulting with some hospitals, and we've been utilizing AI in kind of a healthcare setting. So just talking about even, yesterday we talked about if we would have personal assistants, and Nora Health will kind of has some elements of that as well too. So very excited to see the future of that. Happy to be here.
Hi, some of you know me. I'm Elizabeth Dalton, currently with IntelliBoard. I've been in educational technology for about 30 years. And at IntelliBoard, what I'm working on as a learning and development analyst is gathering data from all the different kinds of technology that learners connect with, and bringing it to one place and focusing and manipulating that data or interpreting that data to make predictions about learner success. There are a lot of different definitions of learner success. I'll be talking about those in my session at 12:45, and how I'm spending a lot of time right now experimenting, reading, thinking about how new emerging AI tools can help us to learn, to understand what learners are doing, to understand how learners are affected by their learning environments, by the people that they are learning with, and to be able to gather that data. And I mean, we're talking big data, right? Lots and lots of data. And this is where I think AI can really help us to interpret that mass of data and use it for human purposes, to help us reach our learning goals and to help the learning process be more available to everyone. So that's what I'm hoping to talk about today. Tim.
Hello, I am Tim Hunt. I am a senior software developer at the Open University. I suppose if I got to pick my job title, I would say educational software developer. So professionally, I'm a computer programmer, but I would say as an amateur, I'm a very interested spectator on the kind of scholarship and science of how education works and how technology supports that. So hopefully I have something to contribute today. We'll find out.
Hi everybody. Good morning. I'm Heikki Wilenius from the University of Helsinki. I'm an e-learning specialist there. And I'm also a postdoctoral researcher at the same place. And I'm just starting a new research project on how AI tools are changing the workplace, especially the work of software development. So I'll be sort of trying to wear two different hats to this discussion today.
So everyone, just like to say thank you to our panelists for joining us today, and it's absolutely fabulous to see everyone here. So the first question, this has been a big one in the media and with a lot of the dialogues around AI. So really, data representing the world as it stands with its existing biases are used for training AI and perpetuate some of these biases and has an impact on students. The question that we want to discuss now is, do you think educational institutions are equipped to be prepared to address that potential AI bias? Now, I've chosen images for each of these questions. This is an image of a Senegal Barbie, which was in a BuzzClick article a little while ago. May not be immediately obvious what the problem with this image is. She's carrying an AK-47. That article was pulled down very, very quickly. So we want to be able to understand, and I'd like the panelists to actually discuss, what do they think that institutions can actually deal with these issues? Is it their responsibility, or do we think it should be pushed back to the vendors on that? So, Elizabeth, would you like to start since you're a data specialist?
Well, are our educational institutions equipped or prepared to address potential AI bias? They're not addressing potential bias without AI. So, no. However, it is not all grim.
Yep.
We can start to use AI tools to look at bias. And again, this is part of knowing that we have a lot of data. If we expand so that we're getting data from more different sources, more open sources, we're at an open software conference. One of the problems that we have with a lot of AI tools right now is that they are trained on the weird data set, white, Western, higher ed, wealthy. And what we need to do is be including more data sources, more voices, and then we will be in a better position to be able to look at bias. But there has been some very interesting research about the bias. And we're starting to see, for example, in the area of learning analytics, one of the more interesting papers that I saw a couple of years ago was, if you've ever done anything with predictive learning analytics, there's this graph that you end up seeing, the receiver operator curve. So you've got some grid and you've got a diagonal line and you've got an arc, and you want that arc to be pulling away, showing that it's making more and more effective, accurate predictions. Slice that data by your demographics and say, does it equally accurately predict for all your different subpopulations? So people talk to me about, will it be ethical to include demographic data in predictive learning analytics? Won't that introduce problems? We have to include that because we have to be able to analyze our AI systems by that demographic data, or we will not detect the bias. So this is where, we'd all like to be colorblind and wealth blind and all of that, but that's an illusion to a large extent. We can try to be that in our day-to-day lives, but when we look at the data, we can't pretend. We have to actually look at the hard, messy details and say, if we're going to try to get bias out of our systems, or we're going to at least acknowledge where our systems are biased, and they always will be biased because they are created by human beings, and we are biased by our own experiences. It's the way our brains work. But we can try to overcome that, and we can try to help our AI systems overcome that by taking a good hard look and testing our systems against those biases.
Thank you, that's brilliant. Who would like to speak next? Meghan?
Yeah, I think when I contemplated this question, just emotional intelligence always comes up for me. So playing on that is obviously human beings. We were created. We're the sum of our experiences. And I think as educators, and even if the data is biased, correct, we should utilize that to say, hey, this is a beautiful opportunity. Where are our opportunities, and how can we grow and develop, and how can we make it more accessible? So how can we use this tool? How can we develop those critical soft skills? How can we develop more emotional intelligence and understand people from areas that maybe we don't have that experience, but with AI and getting a more broader view, I think that we can actually address those biases more by just understanding our own human nature. have like a background kind of in anthro too, and I think studying ourselves is always the most difficult, so it's beautiful to be in a place where there's people from so many different perspectives, and having more open-ended conversations to seek to understand, to assume that positive intent, and utilize this technology, and just understanding that like, this is the direction we're growing and we're developing, and it's a great tool. We just need to be responsible. So I think in the education system, we should embrace it and just use how we can most responsibly utilize it to grow.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you, Megan, and thanks, Elizabeth. So one thing I disagree is that we are focusing on bias in the way where it creates more fear, and the advantage of AI will be limited if adoption is not there. So from that perspective, I'd like to bring the difference between ethics and bias. So sometimes bias is needed. So one example I'd like to share is, let's say you are building a predictive model for finding out at-risk students in a classroom to be able to help them early in the course, right? So earlier in the course, you have limited data, real data about the students and how they are participating in the classroom. So if you don't have enough data and still you want to predict, then the data model you will choose will need to have some bias to be able to accurately figure out early enough so that you can intervene early enough. So from that perspective, sometimes bias is actually good. What is more important than bias is ethics. Like ethics is basically what is the principles, what is the intention behind building an AI system, and then based on those ethics, we have to implement accountability. That whether the system which is built is following those principles or purpose that was put in the beginning. And so I'd like to share that when we are building AI system, before we worry about bias, let's really focus on purpose and ethics, and then set up controls in place to make sure that we are really intentionally moving in the right direction. And bias itself, like for education sector, I believe that since we are so slow in adopting new technology, bias will take care of itself outside the education in due course, and let AI help us in improving our education. That's my viewpoint. Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
I don't have a lot to add to this. When I saw the question, it was like, does anyone right now know how to address the potential biases? I mean, this is a very new field. I think the whole world is grappling with how to address this, and any early adopter sort of has an ethical duty to consider this. And I think it's heartening that very early in the kind of discourse about this has been picked up and is considered important. Are institutions equipped to address this? Well, my bias here is that I work for a university, and the kind of discourse I see in my university about the potentials of this new technology, it is a culture that worries very much about biases, and we are certainly aware, looking at our data, that our outcomes are not equitable despite what we would like to be the case. I'm sort of heartened that actually what Elizabeth was saying, that by distilling a lot of data, I mean, and by kind of bringing out these biases that were previously perhaps hidden, I think AI might actually move the whole bias kind of, I mean, we like to think we live in in an enlightened culture, but these biases just persist decade after decade, which is really rather depressing. Here is another opportunity, another kind of point being given to us about quite how biased we are without really meaning to be, and as a society. So, yeah. So by being a sort of mirror of us, maybe it helps us see ourselves. And feedback is how we learn. Maybe this is a form of feedback that we still have a lot to learn here. But I mean, I feel I would trust the average university more. I mean, big internet retailers will be using AI to sell you more stuff. They probably mostly only care about the bottom line. I would trust the average university to take a slightly more enlightened approach. So I was saying, no one's really capable of this yet, but I would trust the average university more than the average kind of commercial people. But also no one knows right now, so let's all work this out together and try and make our own contributions to pushing the sort of world in the right direction.
Okay, just maybe riffing on what others already said, maybe I could add that. Some scholars argue that we should have like a human rights-based approach to AI in education, meaning that AI systems should be both designed and used inclusively, and they should include this kind of human rights safeguards. And in principle, that sounds like a good idea, right? Of course, but I don't know. I'm very skeptical of a technological solution to this, at least in the near future. As long as people are uncomfortable talking about bias, we'll suffer from it, and I think our technological tools will mirror this reluctance. But one practical thing we can do is to address the issue, just like Amaya Anapitarte and Sara Arjona did in their excellent talk on gender bias on day one of the conference. So we should address and demonstrate AI bias in the classroom as well, just as forward-thinking educators already talk about various forms of bias, and use that as a starting point for critical engagement with the subject matter, whatever it is.
Thank you. That's really appreciate the responses. So we'll move on to the second question. And if anyone can pick the pattern here, we now have Oppenheimer. Again, image that I generated, let me try that again. AI-generated image of Oppenheimer here. The legislative framework. So currently EU's proposed legislation, and there's also legislation in other parts of the world around regulating AI. In some cases, the use of AI may be considered high risk in certain regulatory environments. So what do you think the impact of those sort of regulations might be on the education industry? Rajnish, would you like to start on this one?
Sure. I think that picture actually is very relevant to AI in the sense that AI is so potentially powerful that if not regulated, it can be quite destructive. So I think more or less we all agree that there is a need for regulation. Now, what will be its impact to education industry? I believe that in short term, there will be minimal impact, mainly because, as I was alluding to earlier, is that the education sector will be slow in adopting AI. So by the time it gets here, it will be well regulated in terms of bias and risks. In longer term, I believe that it is certainly a huge risk in the sense that if we start using AI for personalized learning and tutoring, and that tutor is so biased that it can brainwash the kids at early age, at scale, that is scary because now you can have a tool which can generate content which is very biased, which can really, if the purpose or ethics of the AI in the beginning is set to really build a next generation of kids which just follow the government, and then we can see the risk where it is going. So in terms of long term, it is very difficult, very risky. In short term, I believe one thing where I like to bring up is the content creation, where since so much of creative content is being consumed by AI without compensating the creators, and that's very, very relevant for education institutions. So I believe regulation there will be very, very helpful. Yeah.
I mean, with regulation, obviously it's necessary. So we need checks and balances. I think it just really goes down to we're educated people, right? We know that we need to be responsible with these things. And so while it's necessary, I think we do just need to have like proper things in order and understand the ethics of what needs to be regulated. In my kind of lens, right, I'm in healthcare, so looking at how we're going to be utilizing this, we want to keep people safe. And I think a lot of this, we need to understand human behavior, you know, what's most advantageous. You know, everybody is going to want to utilize AI to their best benefit. That's perfectly fine, but is that going to go too far? So we do need to make sure that we're keeping people safe. And this is a brilliant tool that we can exercise greater limits of our creative and cognitive abilities, I do believe. But we should be wise. And just making sure that there's still that creativity and we can utilize it to its full potential without anything breaking ethics, I guess.
We can't wait for the regulation. We need to be the ones driving it. The people in this room are people who are passionate about learning. We know how humans learn. We are passionate about technology. However little you think you know about AI right now, you know more than most of the people that you will walk past on your way out of the conference center today. So what I think about this is that in the education sector, whether we're talking about higher ed, K through 12, corporate education, NGOs, we should be the ones exploring this and driving what this legislation should be, because we are the most informed about it. We need to be the community that starts talking about this and talking with each other and talking with our students who, whether we wait or not, are going to be out there doing things with AI. We need to be leading the legislative effort.
Yes, well put. I think, yeah, for me, as I said before, we don't, you know, this is very early days in the world of super powerful AI, and I'm reminded of a line that Martin already used in his keynote, that with great power comes great responsibility. Yeah, so from what we can see now, this is extremely powerful technology. Extremely powerful things do need to be regulated, but writing regulation is not easy, right? If it was easy, you'd just have one law that's be good, but that doesn't work, unfortunately. So are we in a position, do we understand the space well enough to write good legislation? Because even pretty good legislation, I mean, GDPR was written with a fairly good understanding of how the internet worked, and is, as legislation goes, generally pretty good, but it still has the unintended consequences of every website you go to has an annoying cookie banner. Is that actually making the world a better place? So I'm a little bit worried that preemptive attempts to write regulation, while they might seem desirable, might have very bad unintended consequences. And I think there's a bias here. Again, large, powerful players in the world who are probably the people who most need to be regulated probably have the kind of legal teams who can negotiate big, complex legislation. What legislation might do is kill off the ability of small, less powerful people to do interesting research and development and exploration without really stopping the big guys. So that's my worry here, that it disproportionately impacts the people who could do the most interesting work. So I'm sure this needs to be done ethically. I'm not sure we're yet in a place where legislation will lead to the kind of regulation we actually required. At this moment, really, while there might be risks, the world needs to explore this and work out how, find the most ethical and beneficial ways to use it and see how it's abused. And then once you know how it's abused, then you can write more targeted legislation. But yeah, so that's my fear. It's difficult to legislate yet. We will need legislation, but also we need to have the freedom to explore this ethically.
So the EU approach to AI legislation equates trustworthiness with acceptability of risks, and some scholars have criticized this approach to AI, where the central problem is seen to be AI's trustworthiness. For example, I think it's reasonable to say that an AI might be trustworthy, but still exploitative in some other way, for example. And regarding what Tim just said, that so in the EU draft, AI-related educational AI systems are considered to be high-risk AI in EU's classification and need to be assessed and registered in a database if the current draft bill will pass. And it's going to be interesting to see, will it just like prevent small actors from playing, or what will the practical impact be? But so I have no clue. But actually, I was sitting yesterday in a panel. There's somebody here who works in the EU administration, so I would love to hear their thoughts if we have time after the after the round. Maybe they have some inside information on this one.
Excellent, thank you. So the last question, and this is the fun one. In an ideal world, AI has the potential to have a huge impact on education on a number of fronts. How do we think AI will have the greatest positive impact to education? Yeah. And I'd really like the panel to think to address what areas or what uses do you think that you would, what things excite you about AI particularly? So, Tim, would you like to start on this one?
Yes. I have no clue. I think it's like asking someone in about 1993 what will the biggest impact of the internet be? And would anyone then have predicted, let's say, Facebook? I think so. I think really, and come back and ask me in 10 years and I'll give you a good answer. But actually, I think the biggest impact is going to be something we really cannot even imagine now, and quite a lot of us will be surprised. And that's sort of quite exciting, I think. So I think it will change our perspective in ways that but again, I'm quoting Martin, but I think we're never going to lose educators. For me, it comes down to what is your definition of education, but for me it is one generation passing on its knowledge and more to the next generation, and that is always about one group of humans bringing, upskilling the next generation, and powerful technology is only going to let us do that better. We all know in this room, again, going the parallels of history, how the internet has helped us bring more education to more people. And again, as a powerful technology, this can only help us bring more education to more people, but as a tool to augment and scale up what one teacher can do. Because that's always what technology has done. It's made things that were previously exclusive, going back way into history, like in the 18th century, you were either rich enough to pay a servant or you did your own laundry. And now we all have washing machines, which seems a bit of a mundane example. But, technology has enabled more people to have stuff that was previously exclusive. So, again, can't really predict how, but I think AI has huge potential to do that sort of thing. Which way do you want us to go, Brett?
Who would like to speak next? Yeah, Heikki?
Well, like Martin outlined in his keynote, I think we need, our best bets are openness and privacy-mindedness, and I suppose most of you will agree with that. But continuing on what Tim said regarding predicting AI's impact, I think it makes sense to look for answers from the history of new media adoption. For example, the media historian Lisa Gittelman has observed that when a new media technology emerges, there are always lots of expectations of what kinds of changes will take place. But generally speaking, these predictions will be off the mark. An obvious point of comparison is the birth of internet with the creation of ARPANET. But if you'll indulge me, I'll go on a small detour and talk about Thomas Edison and the birth of the phonograph, tinfoil phonograph. So it was very perplexing to people in the beginning. Not that different from the people's astonishment of using ChatGPT during the past year. So Edison's tinfoil recordings, they were actually inscribed on tinfoil paper. They were a black box of sorts because it was impossible to decipher by humans, like how did it work by looking at it, and it was working against the expectations of people, indiscriminately recording everything, and that was astonishing about it. And Edison thought that this would be used for recording, the like lofty things like speeches of the presidents for the next generation or something like that. But people enjoyed hearing like fart sounds played back on the device and stuff like that. Sound familiar with the internet? Eh? So, same thing with ARPANET. They thought that it's this new handy way to pass RFCs between institutions. That's really great, right? But then the actual internet happened. Yeah. So we simply don't know what the impact will be, and it might be much more banal than we expected, even though just like the phonograph and the internet, they were unbelievably useful for education in the end. But what do we know, again, based on previous research, is that when new media is introduced in an organization, the existing genres of communication within that organization will change. For example, let me give you one more thing about concrete example on education. Reflection papers. When you send ChatGPT some lecture notes, it does a decent job at converting them to reflection paper. I'm sure many of you have tried that. But when you ask it to add critical reflection to the first draft, it's actually pretty good. It can make nice critical reflection to the reflection paper. So I was astonished how that critical reflection is actually not a faculty solely of humans, but it's actually an educational genre, something that GPT can produce quite fluently. So I think the greatest positive impact will come to those who are willing to accept these kinds of genre changes in education and modify their style of teaching. But as Fred Dixon argued in his presentation on Tuesday, what learning means will still stay the same. If one wants to learn, at least a little bit of struggle is required.
Okay, so there are so many possible impacts, and Tim is right. We've just got no idea. We're in the rocket ship speeding, and we don't even know what planet we're headed towards. But let's talk about a couple of positive impacts that are, I think, related. So, we've heard about the idea that a ChatGPT or another large language model like that can take a bunch of notes, write a reflective paper, even do a critical reflection in that paper. And then we're all thinking, okay, so then the student just hands that in and that's the end of it. But what if the student uses that and reads it and says, oh, yeah, but I would change this bit. And now we're talking about using AI as a learning scaffold. So, we talked about earlier, a couple of people this week have talked about Vygotsky and zone of proximal development. Big, long, complicated word, but it basically means you want to try to have learning at a point. Learning takes place best at a point when the task is hard, but not too hard. And there are a lot of things that new learners try to do, and when they first start, they're too hard. So one of the things that I think could be an advantage for AI is to give people the ability to start to do something that they thought was too hard. So I'm going to finish this with a personal anecdote. I have all these ideas in my head. People who know me are like, I could explode like an egg in the microwave. I've just got ideas coming out of me all the time, but I can't draw. My hands shake all the time, not just when I'm up in front of an audience. And I have ideas that I want to get out there so that other people can see them, and some people would interpret them best visually. And in my head, they're all in glorious 3D, moving over time, and I can't get them out there. Well, I even had this little card game that I wanted to work on that would require an illustration on every page, and I tried to hire illustrators and they would never get back to me, and I tried to use clip art and it kind of looked chunky, and I used 3D software to set up my scenes, and that worked, but it took forever. And I did all of the illustrations for my card game almost in one night playing with Midjourney. It gave me a voice for this idea that I had inside me that I wanted to share with other people. Will anybody else care about it? I don't know yet. Will it be, about as interesting as rainbows and unicorns studying at a university, which is charming for about, 30 seconds, and then we're done with it? I don't know. I don't know if anything that I did is worth all that much, but a couple of the things that I came up with I really liked. And I felt like they gave a voice. And Tim wants to react to that, so I'm going to give it back to him.
Well, again, sorry, harking back to Martin's keynote, but Martin said when he goes out into the world, what he wants is from other people, from content, is a human being's voice and, point of view. And what you're saying is this technology has empowered you to better get your point of view out there, which is kind of great. I mean, which is what we want. We want to allow, empowering people to express themselves better is a fantastic use of AI. So I just made that connection and wanted to highlight it.
The only thing that I'm going to wrap up with, and then I'll pass this on to the other great people on our panel, is people have talked about, well, is this the end of creativity? No. So again, I'm going to inform you of research in the field. A paper that came out a couple of months ago showed that if you train a large language model like ChatGPT on content that was generated by other large language models, the quality plummets. You need human beings to feed the AI, at least at this point, and I think it's going to be true for a long time. You need original content going in, and ideally we should be compensating the people who generated that content, but in the real world, we all do learn from each other and borrow ideas all the time. How many times have we quoted Martin up here? So without the Martins of the world feeding into these systems, the systems are not going to produce anything very interesting. And the other thing is that how many images did you have to generate before you get one that's worth sharing? The AI generates a lot. But as humans, we are the curators, we are the editors. We are the ones who sift through that and find something interesting that speaks to us, that helps us speak to someone else. So that's our role. There's still a very strong human role in this, and that will be the human role in education, to help our students sift through, write good prompts, recognize something that's worthwhile, and be part of sharing those ideas, those human ideas, back into the system and making them so that other people can find them and react to them the way Tim just reacted to me and I just reacted to him. This is education happening right here.
Yeah.
And Leslie can say that took me about 30 images to get that one, so.
I love it. I'm going to totally play off that because I think, what I would encourage you guys all is look at this picture. What does it make you think of? Like, go back to second grade. What was your dream job? And when you were playing with your kids other kids on the playground, what were you doing? Making up stories and storytelling. One of the things that I always, in sharing hope, right, is telling my clients your story matters. I know in allopathic medicine, what I felt really robbed of was hope because I didn't know there was a future. It's almost like because we get so analytical sometimes when we're all learners, I know we can all get in those modes. Sometimes I feel like it kind of stops our creativity. But I think with this, what's beautiful is we have an opportunity now that if you take away our responsibilities, like if you guys didn't have to earn an income, it's a very cliche statement, but if you didn't need money, what would you do? We would create. I
actually keep my day job, but
yeah. Well, but what in your day job you help create, you help learn, you help expand, you grow, right? That's what we were created to do. Like God created with a plan and a purpose, and to carry out our individual missions, and we all together elevate each other in different ways. And what I think AI is really going to contribute is man, just the opportunity to dream again. We need more Martins. We need more visionaries. We need operators too. So maybe we can bridge those gaps. Maybe AI can be those operators in our lives, those integrators. And it's going to allow us to do what humans do best. And I really believe that is to create. So I'm very excited about it. I could probably talk to days, but
No, it's true that AI is going to unleash our creativity to an unimaginable level. And I don't know how the future will be, but if I'm given lots of resources to build something which will have biggest impact on education, then I like to do two things. So one is, in short term, I like to help our teachers to be more effective in giving personalized learning to the kids. So my son is like in grade 6, and I have seen it's a very small classroom, just 12 kids. But still, I have seen it is very hard to know which student is at which level in the same classroom. And remembering that in every session. So even if we know that, okay, this kid needs help in this concept, but as a teacher, we forget, and it is hard to remember and juggle between 10 students. Oh, he needs help here, that she needs help there. So having an AI tool and an assistant to the instructors who can really understand the students' data and then help the instructors saying, okay, focus on explaining this concept for this kid, or give an exercise of difficulty level at this so that there's a good chance he or she will succeed and have more confidence and move ahead. So I like to build that AI assistant for the instructors. That's the first thing. And second thing, in long term, I really enjoy virtual reality, and I believe it has a really huge potential to education impact. But creating content which is engaging and interesting in that virtual reality, for as simple as creating an experience for, say, using Prism for light to come in and be able to see different colors of the light, right? It is going to require lots of effort to build that. And I think AI can have a huge, as you say, like we can all create those experiences for our kids and for learners and put them in virtual reality. And that will expedite and personalize the learning in the way which I believe will have really good benefit in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I'd like everyone to thank our panelists. That was amazing insights into AI. We're very close to time. We're actually going to run a couple of minutes over because this is such an important topic, and we've got such a good insights from the panel here. We'll take one or two questions, and these are open questions. So if anyone's got anything they want to ask the panel on AI? Yeah. Sorry, can we get the mic down here, please? We've got two questions here.
Just very quickly, one thing I haven't heard much of about AI this week is the huge power electricity requirements for powering these things. I mean, a Google search versus a Google Bing search, I understand it's multiples of power needed to power the one versus the other. And I'm not sure if I've got a question on that, but I just wondered if that might be addressed at some point.
Would any of the panelists like to comment?
This keeps me up at night. Even when I told the story about generating all those images, I was very conscious of the amount of energy that I was using up to satisfy my need to try to get these images out of my head and into a form I could show to somebody else. Algorithms are getting more efficient. We are trying to work on having better ways to generate the power. Every time we take something that humans do and try to automate it, it uses energy. This is the limiting factor. Ultimately, we use a lot of energy for a lot of things. I personally would rather have the AI generate a few images for me than keep my house 5 degrees cooler in the summer. But we do need to be mindful of this. That is a really good point. Thank you for bringing it up.
Heikki, you want to?
Yeah, thanks for bringing up the problem of sustainability, and it's not just the power requirements. I recommend looking up the work of Kate Crawford. She has this book called The Atlas of AI that documents all these the ways in which these big AI products are unsustainable. And for example, there's a lot of recent work on what kind of new chains of externalized labor is required by the fine-tuning of these models. We like to imagine that they just like magically work, but actually it requires like huge amounts of manual labor done in low-income countries, often in exploitative job conditions. So it's just not just the power, it's the resources, it's the exploitation. There's loads of problems with AI on the social side.
Thank you. Sorry, we had another question here?
Yes, I think everybody in this room, by virtue of being here, is fairly privileged and established in their career. I wonder how we can prevent AI effectively kicking away the ladder from people that perhaps, doing the more junior kind of tasks that a lot of us went through. It feels like a lot of, when we talk about AI being like another team member, it might be very useful for us at the stage we are in our career, but how do we ensure that people that are maybe coming up through university and so on and getting to the stage we're at aren't held back by AI taking away everything they would have once done?
I just want to understand the question. Are you saying that it's a different learning path, that they should go through the same kind of learning that you did, or?
A good example is computer programming. You can do a huge amount, you can get an AI to do a huge amount of programming now, so as an experienced developer, it can do a huge amount for you. If you're a junior developer, how do you actually learn? Is it taking away opportunities to learn because it's actually just doing it for you?
My perspective is no. I think that it just changes it. Humans are extremely resourceful, so I think if we need to learn something in a situation for coding, I'm not a developer, I'm a practitioner, but I know enough to be dangerous. So I've had to use some HTML, for example, because I wanted on my website to do something and I was impatient. So I figured it out. I'm not a developer, but I was resourceful. So in that situation, I think that AI can increase, again, our critical thinking abilities and utilizing, because every single person in here is equipped to do really whatever you want to do. You make a decision every day. So I think on the contrary, it would actually expand our ability to learn more in more capacities in ways that maybe we would have limited ourselves. Yeah. And I just think it's going to change learning. We have a different bar. Whereas, when people went to computers in colleges, I'm sure they had the same questions of we did math by hand. What about a calculator? Is that cheating? No, it's just going to change. We're just going to have to be aware of that.
Sorry, just very quickly, I wanted one very small aim to go to the calculator. My father when he did his engineering degree, it was the first years they used calculators at the University of New South Wales. He hated introducing calculators because the problems became much, much harder. So, Tim?
Well, I just think the lesson from history is that this is going to cause major sort of seismic shifts in the social order. And how the human race manages that is going to say a lot about us. But if you look back, Industrial Revolution destroyed a lot of what were previously manual jobs. And the world had to adjust and find other jobs. Every revolution has put a lot of people out of work. Finally, for kind of the people in this room, middle class educated, it's coming for us now. It's not coming for the kind of manual workers. So one thing that's a bit negative. To be a bit more positive along the way, in the past, it was a kind of 6-day working week. If you were lucky, it's now more normally a 5-day working week. So one effect of requiring less manual labour is the general standard of living has risen and the amount of time we spent working has gone down for most of us. So again, hopefully this can ultimately, after a lot of painful sort of seismic social upheaval, that hopefully we can managed better than in the past. Hopefully the world will be a better place where we have more leisure for ourselves and less need to work, but I am worried about how we will get there. Let's all do our best.
Can I just say too, like on that is, even if it removes like some jobs, again, resourcefulness. If you guys lost your jobs tomorrow, you need to eat, you'll figure out another job and you might, who knows, even enjoy it more. So I think a lot of times we're like, oh no, there's change and there's uncertainty and it's like human behavior to say that's scary. But faith over fear, guys, you know, like we'll figure it out. We will get through it. I think that the more open we can be to just embrace more opportunities. I mean, I'm toxically positive, but that's my perspective.
Sorry, on that point, actually, another aspect is, in the past, what proportion of the human race were artists and creative as a living? My guess is that has gone up dramatically during the 20th century, but I'd love it if anyone's got the actual data. So again, that's kind of uplifting the human race away from manual labour for sort of subsistence and survival and towards a world where more people can explore what it means to be human. Maybe.
It will be up to us as the community to make sure that we don't leave anybody behind, that nobody is going hungry, that people still have the opportunity to contribute constructively and to feel like they have meaningful work and a meaningful life. The jobs themselves will change. It's up to us as humans to make sure that we're still humans and we're still taking care of each other.
Thank you. So we are well and truly over time. Thank you so much for the intelligent questions. Thanks for everyone's attention. And once more, thank you to the panel.